Is there, and finally we're getting caught up with the times. New on NFL Live, Brian Schottenheimer speaking at the league meetings today, where he was asked about his options in the draft for the Cowboys.
You're always looking for game changers when you're picking 12th. Like, we don't want to ever pick 12th again. All right, let's be honest. We don't want to pick that high. If you're looking for guys that influence the game, how do you influence the game? You rush the quarterback and you get sacks, strip sacks, fumbles, whatever it is. You score touchdowns, okay? When you're building a roster, kind of think of it from building it from outside in based on guys that get isolated a lot, because when you're isolated and you can't help, it's a pretty daunting task sometimes.
RC, what does Dallas need to look at adding in the draft later this month?
Well, you know, I got to hang out with Adam Schefter last night at this big event, and everybody just pretty much let me go wherever I wanted to be, VIP, as long as I held Schefter's backpack and phones as we walked around. But I did run into Brian Schottenheimer, who was excited about his opportunity in Dallas. But the big thing is, who are you going to add to CeeDee Lamb? Who are you going to add to Jake Ferguson? Are we going to find some skilled players that could create big plays offensively? Everything seemed so hard for the Dallas Cowboys last year. We were looking for CeeDee Lamb to make a play. And then once Dak Prescott was going, they didn't seem to have a playmaker outside of 88 and the occasional opportunity for Jake Ferguson. For me, it's going to be out and get one of those speedy wide receivers who you can add to CeeDee Lamb. That could be an extreme great complementary number two and get the running back later in the draft.
Yeah, it's a good point. Look, it's funny. You look at their roster and you say, well, they could pick this position. They could pick this position. Like, hey, you know what? They could use another one of these. I think you can do that at receiver. I think you can do it at running back, even though they've addressed it in free agency. You go to the defensive side of the ball, and you can make that same argument at linebacker, at defensive tackle, at another edge player. And so that's the hard part. I think that's usually an indicator that the team's got a ways to go. So I think you got to get it right. And to RC's point, somebody that really makes a difference, and that's a little bit what Brian Schottenheimer was talking about. Look, I could see it being running back, even though they've addressed it in free agency. I just don't know that the top guy will still be there when they're picking. So, help for Dak Prescott, who they're going to need to play well if they're going to have a chance. Yeah,
just briefly, I want to commend RC on the ability to avoid tweeting something out on Adam's phones while he was in possession of them last night. That's a lot of self-control that you displayed right there, because I wouldn't have been able to avoid the temptation. All right, more on Dallas. Jerry Jones was asked about any progress in a long-term deal with Micah Parsons. This is what he said.
We are there. I don't view it as urgent at all. And the idea that the only success is getting a contract done at an early time is incorrect. And I'd rather pay more and get it right than I had pay less and screw it up.
What do agents think of you got when you have those direct talks with players?
The agent is not a factor here, or something to worry about. And I don't know his name.
Woo, okay. Micah Parsons does not love to talk about his agent, posting, "David is the best, and I will not be doing any deal without David Mulgeta involved." That's his name, by the way. Like anyone with good sense, I hired experts for a reason. There's no one I trust more when it comes to negotiating contracts than David. There will be no back doors in this contract negotiation. Adam, what more can you tell us about a potential new deal for Micah Parsons?
Well, Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons were clearly discussing the parameters of a new contract, and Jerry Jones there came out and spoke out against the agent. I don't think that statement obviously played well with Micah Parsons. We can get Ryan Clark to talk about it. He knows David Mulgeta very well as well here. But this deal is not getting done without the involvement of David Mulgeta, despite the fact that Jerry Jones thinks it could. And I think the two sides made progress, but there's not going to be a deal here that gets done without David Mulgeta's involvement at this time. And speaking of deals that are a ways apart, Brock Purdy and the 49ers have been talking. They're not close to a new deal at this time. The 49ers have made it very clear, as Jed York has said, they want him to be a 49er for a, quote, long, long time. But there is a disagreement over value right now. The 49ers have his contractual rights this year, could franchise him 2 more years. And the Pittsburgh Steelers continue to await for an answer from Aaron Rodgers, but the Steelers owner and president Art Rooney II said today that all signs are positive and that he hears that essentially Aaron Rodgers eventually will be coming to Pittsburgh. Last weekend, Rodgers and DK Metcalf threw together a throwing session at UCLA, so clearly Rodgers is seriously thinking about signing with Pittsburgh, but no agreement yet. No signs of something of the white smoke emanating from the Vatican just yet. And until there is, we will wait for an answer from Aaron Rodgers.
I like that Art Rooney's like, well, man, I'm hearing this. I'm like, so are we. But I don't know. When are we ever going to figure it out?
April Fool's or September reality. Tim Hasselbeck and Jeff Darlington are here to play. So, guys, I'm going to give you a headline. You tell us if it's an April Fool's joke or if it will become a September reality. All right, first headline. Giants quarterback 1, Russell Wilson, ready for week 1. Jeff, start with you. April Fool's, September reality.
You know, I'm going to go September reality. We talked about this earlier in the show. There is a component here in play that certainly the Giants could still draft a quarterback with that 3rd overall pick. They have veterans in Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. But ultimately, if they were to pick a quarterback and it was not at 3, it would seemingly take time for that player to develop. I see Russell Wilson as the week 1 starter for the New York Giants.
September reality for me as well, Jeff. I see it the same exact way. And if they do draft a quarterback, like you said, look, I think Russell Wilson's there for a reason, to be a mentor, be a starting quarterback if that's the case. Remember when they drafted Eli Manning, the reality is Kurt Warner was their starting quarterback, and Eli Manning was a starting quarterback when his eventual replacement came in. So I think that's definitely how the organization would want to do it going forward. I think this is very likely a September reality.
Okay, so we agree on the first one. Tim, how about this headline? Aaron Rodgers prepares to watch week 1 from his couch. April Fool's or September reality?
I actually think this one's a September reality. You know, a lot of people have talked about Aaron Rodgers, holding up the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know that he's doing that. I think both parties, their timelines aligned. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to go to Pittsburgh if they draft a quarterback in the 1st round or really high. And I think that, for Pittsburgh, look, if they draft a quarterback, I think they'll be fine with Mason Rudolph and whomever they draft. So I actually see the draft happening. I could see Pittsburgh taking a quarterback. And I think if that's the case, Aaron Rodgers maybe decides to walk away.
Well, I'm going to go April Fool's, first of which is, even if that winds up being reality, he'll be in Indonesia somewhere on week 1. He won't be on his couch at home. But I also think that he will wind up playing in the NFL again. I think he'll wind up on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do think this deal eventually gets done. Steelers ownership has alluded to some progress, some optimism in potentially this happening. I'm going to say that Aaron Rodgers is either with the Steelers or he's on an ayahuasca trip. I do not anticipate, however,